Good afternoon, and appreciate your being here for this event that we can credit C-SPAN to for our being here this afternoon. We are familiar with the familiar phrase, "Past is prologue," which is emblazoned on the wall of the National Archives. We have heard the phrase, "History does not repeat itself, it rhymes." This afternoon, with your assistance, I will attempt to apply past is prologue to the history of the second term. But I frankly do not understand history rhyming, so that one will be ignored. We are once again facing the challenge of selecting our president when the winner is too close to call. And we do not expect to witness an election won by a landslide. Some will look longingly on the times when one candidate dominated the political scene. Lyndon Johnson readily beat Barry Goldwater and Richard Nixon, overwhelming George McGovern. In each of those elections, one of the candidates failed to capture the spirit of the American voting public, and the winner had the advantage of a weak opponent. Franklin Roosevelt won his second term landslide because of his huge popularity. However, in many more presidential elections, the candidates are in a pitted battle to present themselves as the one best capable of serving the country, with the winner walking off with a modest majority. It is a customary wisdom that the campaign between the incumbent president and his opponent will be either a referendum on the first term of the president or a judgment of which candidate will be the better leader. Is there really a difference between these two considerations? Does it not boil down to judging the leadership skill of the incumbent based on his effectiveness during his first term versus the unknown leadership skills of the challenger? It's easy to point to the national security or the economic consequent impact on the ratings of an incumbent as the indicator of the popular view of a sitting president. The public was not over-enchanted with the war in Iraq when George W. Bush ran for re-election against John Kerry, but voters, by a small margin, seemed to believe Bush would be the better leader. It cannot be said that the vote reflected a favorable referendum on George W. Bush's first term. The importance of the communication skill of a candidate cannot be discounted as a factor, however. But all of this misses a different evaluation that merits being taken into account in judging between incumbent Barack Obama and his challenger Mitt Romney. That is the jinx of the second term on so many presidents. Only 7 of 19 presidents elected to a second term avoided having a troubled or failed second term. That would give the country about a 38% chance of Obama and the nation experiencing an improved security and economic climate after 4 years if Obama is re-elected. I do not suggest that the gamble should not be taken, simply that history interplaying with politics might give us pause. So what does history predict about a second term for Barack Obama, were he re-elected with so few presidents having success at that time in office? What are the challenges that face those who had troubled or failed second terms? And what allowed others to succeed? And can Barack Obama overcome these challenges if he is re-elected to become a member of that select group of presidents that waded through the quagmire of the second term and somehow came through relatively unscathed. Success in a second term does not imply that there were not failures or significant stumbles, some even severe during that tenure. But the net impact for that time in office had to be the fulfillment of a significant number of the following measures of success. First, the president must provide defense against foreign or domestic threat. Secondly, the president must retain or expand economic, political, and/or social opportunity. This becomes the primary challenge if the nation feels secure from military threat. Third, the president must effectively lead Congress. Since the nation began, there's been a perennial conflict between the executive and legislative branches of government. Most presidents will extend their exclusive bands of authority to the utmost. Congress, on the other hand, generally seeks to limit the president's freedom of action. It is understood, however, that from time to time, setting such limits may be needed. Fourth, the president must avoid a spirit of invincibility, of hubris, which might cause a president to lose touch with political reality. Five, the president must exercise influence over and effectively communicate with the nation. He must be able to communicate persuasively. Six, the majority of American people must have believed in the president's integrity and have sustained a substantial level of pride in the president throughout the 8 years in office, despite specific shortcomings. He must have strengthened the nation on balance by his actions. The president must leave a legacy for the nation. The list of those who prevailed in their second term includes George Washington, James Madison, Andrew Jackson, Theodore Roosevelt, Dwight Eisenhower, Ronald Reagan, and Bill Clinton. Lincoln is a special case in that his successful second term was so brief. It's interesting to note that only presidents who had a more successful second term than their first were James Madison and Andrew Jackson. The following is an accounting of the presidents elected to a second term and the reasons for those that experienced failed or troubled second terms. 4 failed because of a war that seemed unwinnable or for lack of preparedness. Jefferson, Truman, Johnson, and Bush were the 4. Also, 4 failed because of economic crisis or failure to act to deter such a crisis. And these were Jefferson, Cleveland, Coolidge, Franklin Roosevelt for the 37 downturn, and George Bush. 8 who failed due to their inability to lead Congress were Jefferson, Monroe, Grant, Wilson, Truman, Johnson, Nixon, and Bush. 2 failed due to hubris, Franklin Roosevelt for court packing, and Richard Nixon. 4 who did not effectively communicate their agendas or initiatives were Jefferson, Monroe, Grant, and Cleveland. Obviously, the dominant source of failure for second-term presidents has been their inability to successfully work with Congress. Fully 8 second-term presidents have faced troubled or failed second terms due directly to the fight between Congress and the White House. Having a congressional majority of their own party is no assurance of relief. Those presidents who served with the Congress having a majority of the opposing party during their second term included Wilson, Eisenhower, Nixon, Reagan, and Clinton. The competitive battle between the president